All right. Well, welcome. Such a joy to be with all of you tonight. I'm really quite excited. I feel so delighted about a new opportunity. We've been we had a great retreat. Still feeling the effects of it, and with the retreat, a nice trajectory about new ways that we can all support each other in a Buddhist practice. So we're going to tie the teachings the teachings that we do on Wednesday, to a daily practice that would be accessible by everyone. And I'll talk more about that as we get into the teaching tonight. I hope this finds you all well. Take good care of yourselves, good care of those you interact with, and allowing others to take good care of you as well. So as I mentioned at the start, I am very excited. Yeah, we have a full group here. I'm very excited that we are developing a new method for us to engage in the Buddha Dharma. And this text is what we'll be starting with. It's how to practice. So this is The Way to a Meaningful Life by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. Essentially, this book is his commentary on how to engage in the Four Noble Truths, the Buddhist path, how to practice our ethics, morality, and wisdom, the path of awakening. And this is his specific commentary for us with Western minds to engage in the Buddha Dharma. So combining these precious teachings with an actual daily practice so that we can progress along together is something I think we can pull off now with technology and with the resources available to us. So on Wednesdays, we've been giving teachings, and we'll go through a text. And rather than that just be a teaching on Wednesday, with our new online community, we now have an opportunity to communicate, to support each other, to have resources available. And so every day there'll be a posting, and that posting will have the daily practice. So if you want to participate in actually doing the daily practice, working on the teachings throughout the week, and then when you come back on next Wednesday, we've been doing this practice. We've been working on these tools that His Holiness is offering us. Then we come back on a Wednesday, and we continue in the text. But each day we'd have an opportunity to do a practice together. It's recorded, we'll meditate, and then have the focus for that day and something to apply so that my life becomes my practice. And so this is an invitation. You can engage at any level you like. You could just do the Wednesday teachings, do your own practice. You could do the morning practice with us. There'll be an opportunity to read, what the focus is, the lesson for the day. I'll talk about that tonight. But the pre-recorded morning practice will include refuge, the 4 thoughts, 20-minute meditation time, and then bringing our attention to, what we're going to focus on today. What are we going to tend to cultivate this wisdom into our lives, and then a dedication. So that'll all be set, and the big picture view is that we can have teachings on Wednesday. We can have discussion. We can do our practice during the week together, and everybody, who wants to could be doing the same practice, focusing on the same things. And then once a month, have a half-day retreat where we get to unpack these, and that will work our way through the whole text of the Four Noble Truths, not simply by discussing, but applying. By applying the lessons in the Four Noble Truths into our daily lives. So I'm very excited about this, and hope you are too. It's really, I think, a real precious opportunity. So just bear in mind that if you have a question or anything that you'd like to share, you can raise your hand. There's also a little Q&A button at the bottom, and if I see your hand, I'll go ahead and I can mic you through and you can just ask a question. So having said all that, we just finished a retreat with a teaching by His Holiness, a very in-depth approach to the Four Noble Truths. And this text, he's got 3 of them, how-tos, how to practice, which is this one, Four Noble Truths. How to love, which is really bodhicitta, how to cultivate bodhicitta, and then his last one is on wisdom, how to see yourself as you really are, and that's the wisdom that liberates. So all 3 of these are something that he spent a great deal of time sitting down with Jeffrey Hopkins and really communicating his pith instructions that he thinks would be really beneficial to us in this day and age. So really rich teachings. And I'm just going to begin, and so I'll encourage everybody to get the book. It's on Kindle as well. And the introduction is very, very poignant. I did want to just touch on a summary here that he says, in this book, I offer you, the reader, valuable techniques from Tibetan traditions, which, if implemented in daily practice, lead to mental peace. And so that's the emphasis that I'm encouraging people to is to do your best to have a daily practice. And again, if you miss a day, or this is not perfection. This is that each day is a new day, and I could have a daily practice today if I didn't have one yesterday. And this is the way that we engage. Days come and go. Some days I'm on, some days I'm off, but each day is a new day. So each day we can start a daily practice. But if we can sustain it, support each other, really meaningful. As you calm your mind and your heart, your agitation and worry will naturally subside, and you will enjoy more happiness. Your relationships with others will reflect these changes. And as a better human being, you will be a better citizen of your country and ultimately a better citizen of the world. And so he's offering this advice in the introduction. It's really meaningful. But where I'd like to begin is he's got the basics, which is section 1. But we want to get right to identifying suffering. So page 27, identifying the scope of suffering. This is the starting point. The first noble truth is this truth of suffering, of dukkha, of unsatisfactoriness, this state of just being frustrated or stressed or unwell, that there's no peaceful state that we'll find in samsara, that there's even momentary fleeting states of serenity or peace are come and go. And then we're still subject to aging, sickness, and death, and stress, and worry, and fears, and all of the mental afflictions that arise from us just trying to be happy. So our starting point is to start to identify and understand this nature of samsara, the nature of dukkha. Because if we start here, if we get this right, well, we really have an opportunity to stop suffering. If I don't even know the ways that I am contributing to undermining my own happiness, well, it's going to be hard to undo those things. So really critical, and that's why the Buddha started there. It's kind of like, if I don't know I'm in prison, I'm not going to do much to get out. And so a lot of our lives seem pretty okay. And then other times not so okay, and I can be in emotional duress, I can be in grieving, sadness, tragedy, fear, worry, anxiety, and then I'm not, and then I feel, wow, life's pretty good. And then what I'm paying attention to feels great, and then, a pandemic comes along, and whoa, what's really important? And so there's an opportunity here, I think, in this very moment in time for all of us to really have a very clear reflection about what's our life about, what's meaningful, what's purposeful, why are we here, and how should I engage in the life that I do have. This is a really poignant time, really meaningful, really offers so much opportunity, I think. We tend to often require some suffering to question, to make change, to find some inertia. When things are going well, we're rarely growing well. When we're shook up, then there's an opening. So we have an opening right now to find ways to not be subject to all the suffering, to start to see more clearly, to recognize that we can get out of our prison of habitual thinking and perception and affliction and discover our true nature. So I'm just going to start here, and on page 27, identifying the scope of suffering. The main principle of Buddhist morality is to help others, and if that's not possible, at least to do no harm. This fundamental commitment to nonviolence, motivated by concern for others, is central to the three types of morality in Buddhism. So just two things he's talking about, and it's just really concise. One is a commitment to nonviolence, non-harm, and motivated by a concern for others. The first type of morality he talks about is the morality of individual liberation, which is the subject that we'll start with. It's mainly practiced by refraining from physical and verbal actions that cause harm. The practice is called individual because it provides a way for a person to prepare to move beyond the repeated round of birth, aging, sickness, and death, which Buddhists call cyclic existence or samsara. So this first grouping of morality, of individual liberation, is really the ground from which we find liberation from suffering. It's right there, liberation. And it really starts with being aware of why I'm doing what I'm doing. This morality is always focused on what's my motivation. And the more that we can tune into that, the more we can transform our whole experience. There are just certain things that are done with ill will and cruelty and out of pride or jealousy, and with these motivations that really wreak havoc in our lives, the lives of others, and perpetuate samsara, create more mental afflictions. And there's other types of ethics and morality, other types of motivation coming from selflessness, coming from compassion, coming from loving kindness, this sense of non-harm, this sense of goodwill, concern for others, that are going to cultivate this path of awakening and create a lot of genuine happiness and well-being, which he was talking about right at the start. Kind of peek over here just to keep an eye. The second type, the morality of concern for others, called the morality of bodhisattvas, being primarily concerned with helping others, is mainly practiced by restraining the mind from falling into selfishness. For those practicing bodhisattva morality, the essential point is to refrain from self-cherishing, but also to refrain from the ill deeds of body and speech. So both the individual liberation and then really get away from this self-cherishing, to have all other sentient beings have their concern at stake, present in our minds. And I'm not more important than anyone, that I'm here to help everyone. And then the third one is the morality of Tantra. Centers around special techniques for imagining a fully developed state of body and mind effectively helping others. It provides a way to restrain and thus transcend our limited perception of our bodies and minds so that we may perceive ourselves shining with wisdom and compassion. And so that third one applies to people who are engaged with Vajrayana path, receive certain empowerments, and there's a code of ethics and morality that help one really be able to prepare the conditions to visualize their highest potentials of wisdom and compassion, of really seeing themselves in more of a pure way. Those are very specialized teachings and trainings. And all of them are foundational on where we're starting. Doesn't matter how many initiations someone has, doesn't matter how many empowerments somebody has, doesn't matter. If we are not cultivating the fundamental foundational aspects of morality, body, speech, and mind, those empowerments are like pouring water on a rock. Doesn't matter. The fertilizer for all spiritual growth is this morality. So important. And I want to touch base on it here. Practicing the morality of individual liberation requires the self-awareness needed to refrain from physical and verbal actions that bring harm to others. This means abandoning what Buddhists call the 10 non-virtues. These are organized into 3 categories. The physical non-virtues are killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. The verbal non-virtues are lying, divisive talk, harsh speech, and senseless chatter, sometimes called idle gossip. The mental non-virtues are covetousness, harmful intent or ill will, and wrong views. And so this is a top 10 list. And if anyone was to really nail this and to be able to bear in mind, to be aware of, when I'm engaged in any kind of harm, lying, divisive talk, harsh speech, this harmful intent, ill will, covetousness, this jealousy, we can just eliminate a lot of suffering right there. So these, when they say there's something like 84,000, top 10 list across all Buddhist lineages, you're going to find this top 10 list. These get us in the most trouble. They're the most common. So knowing them is very important. And we'll spend some time this week being aware of them so we can bear them in mind. Since motivation precedes and drives actions, controlling it is the best way to prevent impulsive and possibly abusive physical and verbal actions. When you suddenly want something and just reach out and take it without considering the consequences, your desire is expressing itself impulsively, without benefit or reflection. In daily practice, you learn to continually examine your motivation. And so this is what mindfulness is, to really be aware of my motivation. Instead of just reaching for something, what's my motivation? Is this healthy? Is it wholesome? Is it beneficial? That there's a pause there, that there's an awareness. And mindfulness foundationally is going to have us have an opportunity to notice the motivation to guard body, speech, and mind. Motivation's the most important piece of karma. Much more than what I'm doing, it's why I am doing it. And if I can be aware of my motivation and I can really regulate that, I can, in everything I do, be cultivating the path of awakening instead of the path of suffering, just by being aware of my motivation. So again, daily practice is going to provide this opportunity. And then he tells a personal story, which I encourage people to read, but for our sake of time and for our practice, I want to get to these next page on 31, the Four Noble Truths in the introduction and to our first truth of suffering. So just checking on everybody here. Okay. In order to free ourselves from cyclic existence, we need to understand its nature. We need to, 1, know the specific types of suffering involved. 2, discover the causes of those sufferings. 3, see if it's possible to remove those causes. And then 4, determine what should be practiced. Renunciation therefore involves at least a partial understanding of the Four Noble Truths. And he's making a point of renunciation because that is the entry point into a Buddhist path, is renunciation. So it's an awareness of these Four Noble Truths. So I know what I'm renouncing, so I know where my suffering is. So I'm aware of why, how I'm engaging in this path. When Buddha began teaching for the first time, he taught the Four Noble Truths in the order just giving: true suffering, true sources of suffering, true cessations of suffering, true paths for actualizing true cessations. However, this order does not reflect how these truths come into being. In temporal sequence, the second truth, the sources of suffering, precedes the first. Right? The source of suffering, then there's suffering. Similarly, the fourth truth, the path of practice, must precede attainment of the third, the cessations. However, Buddha taught the four truths of this order of practice, not in order in which they are produced. So it just makes sense, right? Truth of suffering, what's the cause? So the cause precedes the truth. Cessation, truth of cessation, well, the path, the fourth one, is how we achieve that cessation. But this is how we practice. First, we know there's suffering, and then we look for the cause. Then we ask the question, can we remove these causes? Can these be removed? And then the path, how we do it. So it's really very, very clear, very orderly. In practice, you have to identify the extent of suffering first to know that this type of life is beset by misery. This deepens your natural wish to be freed from pain. When you recognize suffering for what it is, as the Buddha did, then you will be drawn into discovering its causes, the sources of suffering. Just as a doctor must first diagnose a disease, you must understand the root cause of suffering before you can treat it. Not until you have determined the sources of suffering can you understand that there could be cessation of it. Also, without decisively understanding that the end of suffering is possible, you might consider the practice of this path just a fruitless hardship. You really have to have some clear understanding that we can be free of suffering. It seems so unattainable until we investigate. I have some allergies, so I'm a little congested. Apologize. Also, without decisively understanding that the end of suffering is possible, you might consider practice this path just a fruitless hardship. Then you can seek the true paths for actualizing true sensations. This is why Buddha presented the Four Noble Truths in the given order of practice. And so we're going to discuss the first Noble Truth here, and then in the following 3, coming up in the next chapter. And here's our beginning point. Here's the beginning point of practice. The first Noble Truth, truth of suffering. Suffering is like a disease we have all contracted. To find the cure, we must carefully identify the full scope of the disease, pain, change, and pervasive conditioning. So he's talked about three types. And by suffering, suffering is a loaded term. A lot of times we don't feel like we're suffering. It's the English word that gets applied here, but dukkha is really a state of dis-ease, discomfort, dissatisfaction, and a restlessness and no real solid peace and well-being that's sustainable. And there's varied levels, so he's going to talk about these three levels. And the first level of suffering is out-and-out pain that we all recognize. Even animals want to overcome it, the physical and mental pains of life, like headaches and the anguish of separation, fall in this category. So the first suffering, we can look around, we can see it. There's a lot of suffering. We all have suffering. We have aches in our bodies. We have hardship. We've had emotional relationships that end. We have, we lose people. We worry about our jobs. I mean, there's just this very clear suffering that we experience as humans, that everybody does, and that's everywhere. Very clear. We can see it. The second one, and this is going to be the focus of our practice initially, it's a little trickier. What we usually experience as pleasure is mostly a diminishment of pain. If good food or drink, for example, really were just pleasurable, if they had the inner nature of pleasure, then no matter how much we ate or drank, we would feel greater and greater happiness with equal measure. Instead, if we partake excessively, we begin to suffer in our bodies and minds. This indicates that our experiences of pleasure have an inner nature of pain. So these things that can provide pleasure also contain the seeds of suffering. I like to tell the story of a family that buys a new television. Compared to the old one, it's really great. And everyone watches it for days on end, but eventually they get tired of it. This indicates that the original pleasure has the nature of pain. Such states of temporary happiness are called the suffering of change. So I'm going to talk a little more deeply in that because this is going to be our first invitation practice, but to notice the suffering of change. And things that provide pleasure also provide the seeds of suffering. It changes. Things that once gave us pleasure can not give us pleasure. Things that once gave us pleasure can actually create suffering. And there's going to be this change that takes place. And what we want to observe is that nature of change, that thing, whatever it is, will not always provide happiness. It can't. And then the third one, which we'll get into a little bit more later, but we want to touch on it now. In addition to ordinary pain and suffering of change, there's a deeper level of suffering called pervasive conditioning. Mind and body operate under the influence of karma, tendencies created by previous actions, and afflictive or counterproductive emotions such as lust and hatred. In ordinary life, we are born from and into the pervasive influence of karma and afflictive emotions. Even neutral states of feeling are under the influence of causes and conditions beyond our control. You are stuck in a process susceptible to suffering. So pervasive is the conditioning that we experience, and that conditioning really is at one level just samsara itself, that I'm experiencing all this through my conditioning, and my conditioning is the karma and the afflictive emotions that arise from my misperceptions that are well ingrained within me. And that's much more subtle, and that's something that's hard to unwind. It requires a real steady practice, some insight towards. And that's really arising from our misperception, but these habits and conditions, and you know what it's like when you try to change a habit or try to change and shift a tendency that we have, and or notice strong resentments and habits around that. It's going to be quite a different thing to undo, and that's a conditioning that we have, that we've been having, that we came into this world with, and that we continue to evolve. The good news is we can be conditioning ourselves consciously now. Now we're on a path. We can really change the whole structure of our gene expression, our neural pathways. We can actually start conditioning ourselves in ways that are conducive in a path of awakening. So I'm going to pause there and talk about our first practice. And on page 40, it's the second diamond point. There's temporary experiences like eating good food that seem to be pleasurable in and of themselves, but if indulged continuously, turn into pain. This is suffering of change when a situation switches from pleasure to pain. Reflect on the fact that the deeper nature of the original pleasure reveals itself. Attachment to such superficial pleasures only bring more pain. And so the invitation as we start our practice is to start to notice this week. Now, the very things that we're really attached to that bring us pleasure, notice how they also bring us pain. Subtle things, very simple things, not just something changes like eating too much food, but yes, I was laughing, Aaron and I were talking about this. So I had brought my bike up here earlier. It has a broken pedal, and left outside. I was going to ask Aaron to see if he's got a pedal. A little while later, he rolls up with the bike, and there's 2 new pedals on there, really sporty, got little reflectors. I'm like, happy, got a bike, got new pedals. It's very kind of him, really grateful. I go riding home, and then the back tire just blows out, just swings out from under me. And then I'm not so happy. So the same bike, right, that was, pretty happy, got a bike. Pedal wasn't working very well, not very happy. Get new pedals, pretty happy. Oh, flat tire, and not so happy. And anyway, now he's got new tires on right now at the moment, feeling pretty good. But I can see how just in a swing of a very simple thing, pleasure and the lack of pleasure, but what are the things that we notice that we're attracted to? So our house, our job, our health, our relationships, and so forth, things that we really focus on that are going to make us happy. I mean, what did you do today to be happy? And do those very things also create suffering? So are there activities that I enjoy, but now that I can't do them, I'm suffering? Same activity. Have I been on activities that I got injured? Or is there food that I like but doesn't like me so much? I like it and I enjoyed it, but health-wise, it's not doing what I would like for my body. Suffering of change. These very things that we spend a lot of time cultivating, trying to get right so we can be happy. Does that also create stress over trying to make this happen? Really want to get out and do this, but now I have to work, or somebody called me and now I can't go do that. And now a friend that I have to deal with rather than a friend that I would normally get to speak with. Suffering of change. A friend of mine who I love to have a good time with is now maybe got an issue with. Suffering of change. Now, if we don't notice this, we will spend our whole life trying to decorate our world with the things that create happiness, and what we're fundamentally doing is creating suffering. So I thought a good place to start our first invitation for practice is for us to spend some time noticing this suffering of change, the things that bring me pleasure and how they also create suffering in my life. Very subtle ways could be, like the bike thing, was no big pain, but it just wasn't as much fun when the tire blew out, like, hey, I have a bike. Oh, no, I have a bike. And I'm pushing a bike instead of riding a bike. It was funner to ride the bike than to push the bike, for the record. And so within our relationships with people, we're going to notice that shift a lot. Within even jobs, it might have been really exciting to get a job, then we worry about keeping a job. And, the simple things of food, like, if we're baking something, it didn't turn out the way we'd like. Or I don't get to bake, and I like to bake. Suffering of change. So our invitation, where I'd like to start, is in the foundational teachings of the Buddha, is to start recognizing the delusional way our mind works, trying to find happiness and actually often finding suffering. And often not even making the link there. So my invitation for our practice to begin is to notice during the day these sufferings. Let that be a primary thing that we can observe. And it's different having a conversation where we can kind of talk about it, get it hypothetically, but observe it in real time, note it. So a practice, a daily practice would include waking up immediately, as soon as you can, good motivation. Rare and precious day, I'll never come again. I have this life, I have this rare and precious life. And I'm becoming, I'm cultivating a path of awakening. Make some time in the morning to do a practice. So that could include taking refuge, cultivating bodhicitta, reflecting on the four thoughts, meditation, and then setting a very clear intention for my practice today. What is it that I am doing to cultivate my path of awakening? And tomorrow I'd like it to be an invitation to observe the suffering of change and to check in, see if you can check in 6 times a day. I make appointments with myself. I'll set an alarm and say, well, okay, at 9:30 a.m., I'm going to check in, 9:30, 10:30, 11:30, 12 I'll check in. So I set a little alarm. I make an appointment for myself. And then when the alarm goes off, I pull out my little notebook and kind of check in. I remind myself what I'm looking for, kind of note what I've noticed, jot it down. And then at the end of the day, for our practice to be complete, we want to take some time to reflect on, what have I learned? What have I noticed? This is how we make change, not by talking about things, but by observing, by experiencing, by bringing them to mind again to notice, wow, I keep doing this, hoping for happiness, and this happens. Or the happiness I thought this would bring didn't work out. Or this was really good today, and enjoy that it was really good. But to notice it, and then in the evening, the practice is I dedicate the merit, the wisdom that I've accumulated today for the benefit of all sentient beings. And then I purify any negativities that I may have created. And so we have a practice book on our website under the Wednesday Dharma teachings. You can download the little booklet that you can print out, or just like a Word doc that you could, just print out, staple together. And within that daily practice is a longer practice, a shorter practice. It has our purification practice of Vajrasattva and the Chenrezig Singh practices of the Buddha of Compassion. So we have this practice book, so I'm encouraging everyone to download that, either form that you'd like. And let's begin a practice. You can practice tonight, but tomorrow morning within the community, there'll be a posting, and it'll have the short practice, taking refuge, cultivating bodhicitta, the 4 thoughts that turn our mind to Dharma, 20 minutes of meditation, and then the invitation to set the intention to notice our suffering of change today and to check in as best we can throughout the day. The evening, a little dedication, and purification practice. And we'll make sure to have a video that's also there in the community of a wonderful young nun who does a beautiful Vajrasattva, short Vajrasattva practice to help you kind of get the mantra down. So I'm going to check in there, see how we're doing. We're right at 7:30, see if anyone has any questions. We all got this nailed. What I may do, since I can now, we have technology, is kind of just share with you what I'm talking about. I'm so thrilled that we'll get to actually do some practice together on an ongoing basis in a very structured way and be able to support each other in the process. So give me just a moment. I'm going to pop a couple things on the screen here. All right, good. Go ahead and share my screen. We got a chat message. Okay, good question about the 6 a.m. practice. So we'll get to that, but let's share screen. So this is our Way of Compassion Dharma Center home, and so this is the online community. It's free to join. You know, everything that we do is by donation. So donations, offerings is how we exist, and everything we offer is offered freely. We're a very traditional center in that way. So you can join our community, and around midnight, there'll be a post, and in that post will be the morning practice. It'll be pre-recorded. I've actually already recorded it. And a little outline of the practice. And so that's going to be here in the community. Everyone will be notified if you have your notifications set to receive an email or to have it go to your mobile phone. You just click on that, and it'll take you right to the morning practice. And going to our actual website, not the community, this is where I did post the text that we should purchase, and right here we can access the practice booklet. So if I click on that, you're going to see the little booklet of, and this is set up as a booklet. If you were to print it double-sided, staple it, you'd have the practice booklet. The other version is just, printed out on sheets of paper, and you can download that, and you would have it, and it would all be set here. Guidance on how to start your day and how to do practice. So that's right here on the website. In the community here, like I said, it will be posted at 12 a.m. And so whenever you get up, whenever you're ready, you don't have to be at 6 a.m. anymore. You do the practice whenever you want. So whatever time zone you're in, what we're trying to do is get the opportunity for all of us to practice, for all of us to be able to share. With the daily practice, any insights, you can share that about your practice. We can support each other in the community as well if you'd like to. And this way we'll have an ongoing practice. So we don't need to worry about a 6 a.m. together, because I physically will not be doing a 6 a.m. I will pre-record the practice. I've already recorded for tomorrow. It will be posted, and then you'll be able to do the practice at a time that fits into your schedule. So, any other questions or anything that we can do to help in the process here? Everybody's good. So this is the invitation. Download the booklet, and in the community, like I said, one thing I will show you just hopefully very quickly is that you can go to the community, and in the top right corner, there's a view your stuff. And that's where you can go to your settings and set your notifications. And then you can make sure that you get the any notifications that you like. If you want to have the daily practice notify you, you want to have this little button here as activity happens. If you do the daily digest, you won't get the notification till the day's over. It'll just digest. And then come down here, turn off all your notifications except the ones that you want. And one of them will be hosts and moderators. It's when we post, we want to make sure that you have that on, and then you'll get notified. So again, that is right up here in the top right. I click on that, click on settings and notifications. It's really a beautiful community. We're really grateful that we have that opportunity to utilize this in a new way to connect with and support each other. We get to post all kinds of resources. And then the question is, can you recommend a good place to obtain the book? You know, whatever bookstore you'd like to support is helpful. Of course, you can get from Amazon as well. If you want it in a hurry, that might be the quickest way. They might have them from Wisdom Publications, which is more of a Buddhist-centered bookstore, Wisdom Publications. Or Shambhala, I think it's called now. I think they bought them. Maybe it's Wisdom. I forget which is which now. But whatever you do, wherever you buy it, I think some support will make its way back to His Holiness. So that'll be good. All right. Well, I'm excited. I am delighted. I have a lot of joy in my heart. The thought that we can go through and engage in a daily practice of the Four Noble Truths, apply it into our lives, and support each other along the way is really quite meaningful to me. So grateful we can do it together. So let's go ahead and do a dedication. Let us dedicate the merit and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes. Let us dedicate this for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings be free of suffering, find their liberation. And may we be able to use the merit and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes to help purify our minds, to help us recognize our own Buddha nature, to achieve Buddhahood, so we can be a true benefit to all sentient beings. May we also dedicate the merit and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lives for long life of all spiritual teachers of all spiritual traditions who are authentically teaching a path of no more suffering. May they live long, may their teachings flourish. May you especially include long life prayer and wishes for His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. May he live long, and may these teachings continue to flourish for the benefit of all sentient beings.